Aaron, how did you decide on what type of post-adoption contact you were looking for?
Because I already had my son, I wanted to consider all the options, but I wanted him to really have a relationship with his sister. Going forward, I'm an only child, so I know, being an only child, looking at the future can be hard. It can be scary because you're the only one. As your parents get older, your family members get older, and then you feel kind of like I got nobody out there.
Mhm.
For him to have somebody out there to have a relationship with her, or at least give him and her the option to have the relationship. Um, and working with the adoptive parents, but that's changed over the years now too. I mean, it started out just simply by meeting at Adoption Star for our first meeting. And it's now to the point where we get together every 3 months and they're going hiking and they want to FaceTime each other. And so, I mean, it's totally transformed. But I love open adoption. And actually, we just recently, when we got together, talked about it again as birth parents, how they were a little scared at first to do open adoption. Um, just because, as an adoptive parent, you don't want to be told what to do. You want it to be your child, to raise a child in a loving and supportive home. But then to be able to have, if you choose open adoption, have a relationship also with the birth parents. And I always said I wrote a letter to the birth parents after I had my daughter, and she was born a month early. And I said, "Oh, you get up in the middle of the night for feedings, not me." And so that was like a little joke. So um, I hope that answers that. Sorry.
It does, yeah. Um, and Aaron, I don't mean to put you on the spot or anything, but I know just talking about how that there is open adoption now. Would you be okay sharing a little bit about your father, or is that
Yeah,
you
I
don't want
already
to share?
my father was in a closed adoption, but there's a background story. So, actually, like the year before my son was born, my father ended up having colon cancer, and it runs in his family. However, he grew up in a really small town in the southern tier, and it was really weird. The day he was supposed to come home from the surgery, he was sick for like a year, and they were figuring out what to do, whatever. Anyway, um, my mom's at the hospital. She's getting ready to get my dad, and I'm getting everything ready at the house. And I get a phone call, and this guy's on the phone with me for an hour. And I'm not kidding you. He's talking to me about trains. And do you know how when a train leaves the track, and somehow, you got to talk to the person about how the train leaves the track? After an hour of this, he finally says, "Well, your father's adopted, 62 years old." I said, "Great." He said, "Do you want to tell him?" I said, "Not really." He's coming. He never knew. He did have siblings that were his biological siblings. He went to school with them. He graduated with them. He graduated with this cousin. They go camping all the time now. Um, so that was a close adoption, but he never knew. He literally grew up across the street, went to school with all of them. Colon cancer runs in the family. Nobody knew. He ended up having colon cancer. I ended up not having cancer, but having digestive issues that also run in the family. And we would have never known. So, being a close adoption, my dad made the comment to me, had I known, I would have gone in for colonoscopy. Not that everyone wants to know that. But it was also hard too, being older. He met his mother before she passed. Um, both both of um my son and my daughter, because we go camping in the Finger Lakes every year together, and they've now met that part of the family as well. So it's kind of weird, but it's hard, the difference between open adoption and closed adoption, seeing the relationship, or at least knowing, going forward, like if there's any issues or health issues that come up or anything like that, versus closed adoption where you just don't know anything.
Mhm.
Um, but that's a little bit of the story.
Yeah, I just wanted everybody to hear that story just because of how different it is now, and how important it is to maintain that connection. I think, especially like you said, if things were to come up, medical issues and that, at least the person's there and you could talk about it. And I'm actually,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to ask all of you the same question because I think this is an important question too. Charisse, how about you? How did you decide on what type of openness that you wanted?
I actually didn't decide. I let them decide.
No.
Um, because I was just so all over the place, being pregnant 2 years in a row. My mind wasn't focused on anything but going to work. And at the time, I was working two jobs, trying to take care of a small child and being pregnant at the same time. I pretty much was talking to you, Miss Sue. I was all over the place.
Mhm.
You know that. And I just was like, okay, whatever they decide, I'm fine with. I don't, because this is my first time doing this for this reason.
Mhm.
And it was just like once I signed all the papers, she had explained to me, well, it's gonna be an open adoption. Cool. What does that mean to me? She's like, well, you'll be able to talk to the family. She can write you. They can send you whatever you would like them. And no sooner than 2 weeks after we were both discharged, I received my first letter from them, and it's been on the up and up since. I verbally started having conversations with them to about last year, and it was probably like the most emotional day of my life. It was just a repeat of giving birth to her, but they were happy tears. She wasn't feeling 100%, but she knew that she could feel that I was genuinely there, and it felt good to hear her voice because that's the first time I had heard from her since I had her. And I actually get a chance to see her in pictures when they send them to me. It just makes my heart smile.
Good. I'm glad. It's heartwarming. Tasha, how about you? Like your openness.
I think once Kathy told me about open adoption, it just was no other choice. I just figured I just wanted a little piece if I could, some type of way. You know what I'm saying? And listening to Charisse talk, I was just thinking I haven't heard from them since like 2016. It's been a while, but and hearing you talk about hearing your girl's voice, I'm like, I never, I've never heard. So it's some triggers in there, but like I said, once Kathy told me about the open adoption and how it worked and things of that nature, that was the only road I was trying to take.
And Tasha, I'm gonna have Shannon reach out to you, okay?
Okay.
All right, about your pictures and that. Okay.
Yeah.
Megan and TJ, how about you guys?
Yeah, we are completely blessed with having, I would say, probably an abnormally awesomely open adoption from before I ever gave birth. They were like best friends. I talked to them every single day. They came to my doctor's appointments. They came to my sonograms. We met all the time. We hung out all the time. They became our best friends. Like they were a part of our family. And so now we continue that relationship, and it was something that was really important to us. And like Erin had touched on, it was important to us that like she knew who we were and that she had all that information. Like if, all of my health history and things like that, like we didn't want it to be closed and she would never know any of that. Like we wanted her to know us. We wanted her to know that we loved her, that like we did this with her best interests in mind, and that we're there for her still. And so she could have all of that information going forward that's so important to a child. And I think it stems a lot from, I don't know if you want to talk about
Yeah.
your,
Yeah, I was, like I said before, I was adopted, and it's a totally closed adoption. I don't know anything about my biological parents. So when we started filling out some of the paperwork at Adoption Star, in terms of like all of like the generational health stuff, all I could fill out was my name. And I just wanted them to be able to have that resource if something was to come up in my health, that I could help them kind of just have that, so they can take that into consideration with our daughter.
yeah. And I think it was really interesting. One thing I think back on is that the adoptive couple who we chose, they actually they were against open adoption until your agency hosted something like this, and they heard the birth mom come in and speak, and they said that it completely changed everything, hearing the birth mother speak, which is why, like, I'm so grateful to be here, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity to now be in that position of speaking to at these events. But I just think that's so interesting, and they talk about it all the time with us about how they can't believe that they were ever against open adoption, and they could never like imagine it differently now. But to think that that's where they were, just because there's such a lack of, I think it's just ignorance, like not like in a bad way. It's just a lack of knowledge. People don't know a lot about open adoption, what it entails, and that's scary to people who it's a big life decision you're making. But once they heard the birth mom talk, they changed their mind, and I thought that was amazing.